1770. The future of France rests on the shoulders of a young Louis Auguste, recently named heir after the untimely demise of his brother and father. And today is the day this 15-year-old boy becomes a 15-year-old man, no? Okay, here we are. I want those great-grandkids on my desk by February. Have fun, you two. And he leaves him in the room with a 14-year-old girl named Maria Antonia. At least until she came to France and they told her she's Marie Antoinette now. She's the Archduchess of Austria and daughter of the great Maria Theresa. And the thought of the French and the Holy Roman Empire being friends was still as much of a shock to a lot of the French as it is to me.
So, good to see you. Maria, right?
Yeah.
Do you mind if we don't?
Yeah, let's not, no.
Oh, thank God. I mean, not that you're, it's just that...
Yep. Understandably, they tucked into bed and faced apart, thinking the awkward part of the wedding was over, until the next morning when... Congratulations! This video is brought to you by Magellan TV, the documentary streaming platform with over 3,000 titles who's been supporting the channel for, going on a solid year now. Today we have on offer, let's see, Warriors series, True Crime, Admiral Nelson, Terry Jones was a historian? Oh my god, an Emmy nominated too. Here we are. Empire, the Soul of Britannia, the story of the largest global conquest known to man and how that conquest shaped the political, technological, and social landscapes of not only modern-day Europe, but the entirety of the historical and modern world. You can watch it for free with your 30-day trial at magellantv.com/JackRackham, and, well, this one isn't available everywhere, but there's a cool documentary called Death or Liberty about Australian independence and its connections to the French and American revolutions. You should check that one out too. Once again, that's magellantv.com/JackRackham. Louis became king just a few years later. Inheriting a kingdom as a teenager is kind of like being a child actor. It rarely ends well. If all you know about him is the revolution, you might expect that he went completely off the rails as a mad tyrant, but really, if you've seen my Pedro II video, the two were surprisingly similar. It bears repeating that even the best monarch does not extend his merits to absolute monarchy as a form of government, but with that said, after Louis became king at the age of 19, his sole mission as king was to be loved by the people. In fact, as a young man, he was a bit of a revolutionary himself, pushing forward an edict of religious tolerance that extended the right to exist to Jews and even Protestants. Always consult public opinion, he would say. It is never wrong. The trouble began in the fact that Louis wanted to be liked by everybody, and anything too forward-thinking was sure to draw the ire of the nobility. You see, France was massively in debt, but it had the money to pay off that debt. It's just that the people with the money were the same people who were legally exempt from paying taxes, and also the same people who were in charge of tax law. But the crown had to do something because by 1775, Louis had already had to put down over 100 different riots. In some sense, the revolution was already beginning to take shape. Luckily, as long as France didn't take on any outrageous new spending, they would be fine. Turgot, do you see what I'm seeing? Your Majesty, we mustn't. Turgot, who am I? The King of France, Your Majesty. Correct! And if there is one thing that I share with each and every one of my forefathers for the last 1,000 years, the very essence of what it is to be French, it is this. With God as my witness, when I see an opportunity to stick it to the British, I am going to take it! So the Yankees get independence and France gets another billion livres in debt. They tried to fudge the numbers by insisting that ordinary revenues covered for ordinary expenses, but that didn't make the problem go away. So a new plan was hatched to spend their way out of debt. All they had to do was get enough public spending going to bolster confidence, increase the amount they can borrow, and to do that, all they needed was some money from more debt or more taxes. If you think those are unpopular opinions today, when Louis tried to pass one of the most comprehensive tax reforms pre-revolution, not only did the aristocratic courts immediately shoot it down, even middle-class citizens were out in the streets burning effigies of the finance minister. And so if he can't afford to borrow money, and he can't muster new taxes on his own, there's only one move left. he must summon the Estates General. The most powerful and influential men in France are assembled in Versailles. Businessmen, politicians, landowners, priests, great thinkers, and war heroes. The Estates General was the only body powerful enough to break the deadlock and make new taxes, but it was also a huge gamble on the side of the king because they would have the power to make other changes as well. For instance, they undid a lot of censorship laws, although I'm not sure exactly what those laws were covering since there were already pamphlets literally called libels having a go at Louis's supposed infertility. This is totally unrelated but highly amusing. The pamphlets asked, "Can't the king do it?" And Marie Antoinette's brother goes, "Oh, I can confirm. He can do it." Because, and this is true, Louis and Marie Antoinette eventually had kids, but only after her brother, the goddamn Holy Roman Emperor himself, came to France, evaluated Louis's performance in the bedroom, and gave him coaching tips on how to apply himself to his marital duties. Now, he was never actually in the room, that would have been ludicrous, but he did write to his brother once, saying, and I quote, "Oh, if I could only have been present once, I would have taken care of him." And trust me, the full context is much more explicit. However, the Estates General had not been called in over 150 years, or 3 Louis ago, and it was janky as all hell. There were weird rules about who was allowed to wear what, and most importantly, it was split up into 3 councils that each got a vote. One for the clergy, one for the nobility, and one for the other 95% of the population. A bunch of folks in that third category go, "This is dumb. You're dumb. We're making our own council where we all get counted equally and we're the ones making the laws." And a bunch of the priests go with them, and Louis goes, Wait, no, this isn't how this is supposed to work at all. What are you guys voting on there, guys? Stop it!" But it was too late. By this point, a majority of the estates had made the switch, and the monarchy was absolute no longer. So the French Revolution is weird because it kind of happened from the top down and the bottom up simultaneously, because this was a bunch of appointed officials taking power away from the king, but at the same time you've got stuff like the storming of the Bastille, which was the common people on the ground tearing down the old establishment. But in general, this was the phase when everybody still had their ships together. The National Assembly published the Declaration of the Rights of Man with a little help from Jefferson. All in all, it was the kind of origin story that democracies dream about, and for the most part, Mr. Will of the People seemed to tolerate it because he couldn't do much else, and maybe France could have transitioned with relative peace to a constitutional monarchy and eventually become like Britain is today. But one day the people showed up at his doorstep with guns. A bunch of women in the Parisian marketplace said to themselves, "Hey, we can't afford to eat. Isn't there somebody who's supposed to fix that sort of thing?" And soon enough, a small army of 7,000 had made their way to Versailles. A small delegation made their way to the king's chambers, to whom he turned on the charm and went, "Ladies, believe me, we are gonna disperse food from the royal stores, and you will not starve." But in a way that was somehow so charming that one of the women fainted, unless that was just malnutrition. But the rest of the crowd was not so moved. Is it just me, or is that angry mob getting bigger? Lafayette, defender of truth, justice, and the American way. "Lafayette, come quickly! Bring the National Guard! I've got some good news and some bad news for you, Chief. The good news is that the National Guard is already here. The bad news is they all joined the protesters."
They're inside the palace!
Come to Paris!
"Your Majesty, if you wish it, I am here to die with you, but I have a plan." "Oi! Move the kids so we can shoot you!" "The people of Paris, we hear you, and we will go to Paris. Your words, they move me. Long live the king! 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 At this point, the king kind of disappears while under house arrest in Paris, but it's said that when he arrived in the city, he came to visit an old, dilapidated palace and sat a while in its library, rummaging through its wise and dusty tomes to consult with the written memory of England's decapitated monarch. Meanwhile, the people of Paris were whipped up into a frenzy by guillotine enthusiast Maximilien Robespierre. Not only had Louis lost the support of the lawmakers and the goodwill of the people, he's completely lost his grip on the army. So if the French army won't fight for him, maybe the Austrian army will. After all, they don't want their people getting any ideas, and it would be great if their new ally wasn't too busy fighting itself. The royal family sneaks out a back entrance while Lafayette is supposed to be guarding them and makes it to the countryside. But just before they can make it to the Austrian border, somebody recognizes Louis because his face is on their money. Louis gets hauled back to Paris on charges of treason, which he thinks is ridiculous, but that defense didn't work out so well for England's Charles I. Meanwhile, Lafayette is held responsible for letting the king escape. Robespierre marks him a traitor, people start throwing stones at the National Guard, and the National Guard opens fire, killing 13 to 50 people, so Lafayette just accidentally did a Boston Massacre. The Holy Roman Emperor and the King of Prussia issue a threat saying that if anything happens to Louis, the French had better watch out, and oh boy, that did not make the situation better. It was really just an incidental little thing they said while they were partitioning Poland again, but those were fighting words. So even though you've got France's finest diplomats out trying to prevent war, France fires first, because they didn't plan on hurting their king, but damn it, they'll fight like hell to defend their right to hurt him if they want to. The Prussian-Austrian army, oh my god, Prussia and Austria on the same side of a war, cats and dogs living together. They end up doing really well at first, but they declare their intention to restore Louis to full power, and that right there is his death sentence. He's found guilty of conspiracy and sentenced to immediate execution by one vote. Citizen Capet is marched to the scaffold and tells the people, "I hope at last I may make you happy, even if it is with my blood. But when one can be sacrificed for the many, why not 2, or 3, or 10? Little by little, we will find reasons for sacrificing the many for the happiness of the many, and we will think it was a bargain."